Ray, where are you?
Families that we've met in San Francisco,
3 o'clock.
I could dedicate this to them because it took strong courage. It took parents, fighting parents.
They say when you go through hard times, it makes you stronger. How traumatic and how I wouldn't wish this upon anybody that go through this. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy if I had one, because anything could happen at any time.
Come here, Cheetos.
Yeah, boy.
Look at this.
Well, we didn't know it was a him, but we were talking as if it was a him. He's healthy. Everything's good, Mom. Again, he was so tiny and he was beautiful.
Loopy gave me the green light to go ahead and if you want to name him after you, go ahead. And I said, sure, he's my first, born. So we named him Ricardo Buzo Jr.
It felt like it was completion in the family. It felt like, wow, we have a son. Like we did it.
As long as I'm alive, as long as I'm healthy, as long as I got strength in my body, you're gonna have a good life. I'm gonna make sure of that.
But there was something different about that kid, my son.
Cheetos. Oh, you can't be kicking that down. You're supposed to be learning how to sit up on your own. Time out.
See how one's more than the other?
I believe he was like 4 months old. And he was on the couch and he just all of a sudden stopped breathing. I kept looking at him, he was just.
He went from breathing funny to gasping.
You okay?
I was thinking, man, this does not look good. I was getting thoughts in my head that, man, your son's gonna die.
His eyes would roll. It just looked like he was suffering.
I just remember praying to myself, not panicking, like, come on, ambulance. I need you here like right now,
They immediately take him into the car, put him into the car. They let me come with them.
By the time we get to the hospital, his body starts to calm down and he's a little bit stable now.
Turns out that he had RSV infection again in the lungs. So we waited outside. They brought him to me. They said, just hold on. They wanted to test him. They wanted to see if he's gonna stay or if he's gonna go home. Is he just having an asthma attack? So I held him. I was like, something's not right. It was always like that. Something's not right.
He was having the cold blue respiratory failure, basically what it was. He had about 3 to 4 episodes between 4 months and he was 13 months.
There were so many that they already knew us. Once they pulled in, they knew our names. They didn't even ask questions.
We're asking the doctors, man, is this normal or we don't understand.
Is this severe asthma or some other type of lung disease? And you have to start looking at all the other issues. Maybe he was having some mild delay of development. The kyphosis, the deformity of the back, was becoming more and more apparent. The bones get wide and thick, and that's why all these skeletal deformities start occurring. All of these pieces of the puzzle were pointing us toward maybe there was something more serious going on with Ricky.
I don't know if you should take him out tonight, bro. You're getting coughing too.
I know, I was thinking about staying.
Now we're coming to a point where he could die.
I consulted with specialists about all the things we were finding, and it was the genetics specialist, Dr. Griggs, who suggested that perhaps we're looking at something called mucopolysaccharidosis.
Mucopolysaccharide is nothing but sugar molecules, but they are very complex sugar molecules that can cause harm to various organs of the body, including brain, heart, lungs, joints, wherever they get accumulated.
We were able to run the screening test for mucopolysaccharidosis. Yes, he does have one of the mucopolysaccharidosis. Which one? We don't know yet. There's actually 7 different types. The disease can be extremely life-threatening. They can live to be teenagers. Sometimes they're not diagnosed till even later in life because they can live into their 20s and 30s.
We ended up going to a hospital visit when he was 9 months old. And his doctor, his primary doctor, Dr. Cordova, she looked different, you know, she looked a little bit different.
It's very difficult to tell parents. When you have a bad disease, we have to find out which one it is before we can even tell you what you might expect or what we can even do for you.
So, well, what medicine does he get, we asked. Well, he's not gonna get any medicine. Well, again, we're gonna set you up with the genetics team for you to see next week. It's quite serious than we thought. Okay, well, what's the cure? What do we do? Well, there's not really a cure.
She goes, you know, it's a condition. She goes, I'm gonna write it down for you, you know, but I can't really collaborate on it because that's not my specialty. That's what the genetic, we go, all right, we understand. So I took that little note that she gave me and went home. I got onto the computer and I just typed in that word that she put down on the paper. It was mucopolysaccharide, and it came up and it was coming up fatality. Bam, a picture of a baby, fatality at the age of 5. 3 to 5, respiratory failure, you know what I mean? They die of respiratory failure. I typed it in like 3 or 4 or 5 times, checked 5 to 6 different websites, and they all were saying death, death. By the time, you know, by the age of 5, they all said that. And I couldn't believe it because in my mind I was like, okay, he went from gonna live 100 years in my head to 70 to 50 to 30, and it went down to 5 or 3.
He was very disturbed. And he looked like he wanted to cry. So I told him, don't tell me. I don't want to know. And he says, it's serious. I said, okay, Rick, it's serious, but I don't want to know. Don't tell me. But he still wanted to tell me. That looks like Ricky. He's like, yeah, look at these. And I'm like, and then I started to see a lot of faces of deformed bodies, a lot of the children in cast, wheelchairs. And then he shows me the deaths. And I said, why? To see that reality part of it and what Dr. Cordova couldn't tell us, now I know why she didn't want to tell us until that appointment date. On that date of our appointment, we go and see Dr. Griggs.
I was hoping that he had number 3. If you have that, they could live to, 60, 65 years. The Dr. Griggs goes, nah, your son has the most severe case.
Your son has Hurler's, MPS 1.
Basically, it's inherited autosomal recessive fashion, which means 2 genes that are inherited, one from the mother and one from the father.
Your son is missing an enzyme that helps him form his bones, helps him develop his brain. Your son is missing that.
The defect is in an enzyme called alpha-L-iduronidase enzyme, and it causes a defect in metabolism of mucopolysaccharides. And as a result, mucopolysaccharides get accumulated, and in Hurler's is the most severe form of all the mucopolysaccharidosis.
There's a treatment that we could treat your son's body and it'll help him. But the problem is that treatment, the enzyme that we give doesn't cross the brain barrier. So although it's fixing some of his physical, it can't cross the brain. So if you're gonna make a move, you need to do it now.
He's going to need a transplant. There is no cure for this. He'll need a transplant. And if you don't, he's gonna die.
Hurler's was one of the things you learn about in medical school. It is extremely rare. Out of 100,000 babies that are born, one baby might have Hurlers. That's how rare it is. Ricky is the only patient with Hurlers that I've seen in my career in 28 years.
We were seeking help from a transplant center who has experience in cord blood transplants, who has experience in treating a kid with comorbid complications, and UCSF is one of the best.
We're the biggest transplant program in Northern California, and our survival rates are top in the country. And so when you're looking for transplant for a rare disease, you want to go to the best place nearby.
I was scared. I mean, just like any other father would be, I was scared. Now you're cutting my son's lifespan to now you want us to have a transplant. He's 9 months by the time he's a year. So now I might only have him 3 more months because the transplant is like 50-50.
Well, what if he doesn't make it? Then we took his life shorter because they said he could live up to 5 years old. So why do it now? And then he's gone. We didn't get to spend those, 4 years with him.
I really had to struggle with it. Of course, he was my first son, and he looked normal to me.
Let me see. Turn this way.
Finding an unrelated cord blood transplant in textbooks, it's very rare to actually do such transplants. Is almost about 40% failure. So going through all the transplant, going through all the complications of transplant, it means ultimately you have less than 70% chances to survive and around 60% to be successful. There's nothing good news about it, but ultimately you're paying off if it's successful. You're giving life.
We got a phone call from genetics team in Roseville, and they invited us to come and talk to one of the transplant doctors in San Francisco.
I was still trying to figure out, should I do it or should we not?
We spoke with Dr. Horn, who kind of broke down more of the situation.
Transplant success could not have been guaranteed upfront. Obviously, I would make sure to explain in details what would happen if transplant is not being done.
She gave it to him straight. There is no cupcake in it. There is no, your son's gonna live.
It was either a bone marrow transplant or a cord blood transplant, or you leave it alone and you're gonna watch your son die. And it's a gruesome death because they become deformed. Because the enzyme's not working, their faces become distorted. Their arms begin to claw up.
By 5, at least by 5, you won't have your son no more. That is my experience. You won't have him.
I know as a father you're worried and you're trying to delay this, but this is something that you do not delay because every day, every week that you delay, his brain is deteriorating. You gotta just do this, right? If this was my kid, I would do this. So I had a great respect for that because they didn't play around. They told me point blank, they had to be done.
She assured him about the care that he would have. Everything would be set up for us as far as our stay. And then he said yes. Okay. I looked at him. I said, I guess we're gonna do it. Sunday 11th, 2010. We're on our way to San Francisco. Citos is getting his transplant started. That's my poopy poopy. I love my poopy poopy. Look at yourself, son.
They show us our room. They tell us we're on the 7th floor, which is called 7 Long.
He had his crib. It was like a crib bed made of metal. There was a couch that turned into a bed. Was it cozy? We made it cozy.
Today, -8. -8.
Uzo's on a countdown on his days.
Transplant is 21st. They call it day 0.
The nurse came in and the doctors came in and they kind of projected a plan, a game plan. They said, okay, we're gonna start chemotherapy in a couple days.
During the chemo, they just said he might fever. He might lose his appetite, vomit a little bit.
Come on, Papa.
Nose picky.
The danger is the chemotherapy that they give him is so toxic that it could either shut down his kidneys, it could shut down his liver, it could shut down the way he breathes because it's so toxic. I mean, this stuff is heavy-duty stuff.
In a situation like a Hurler's, actually bone marrow is a very functional, immune system is excellent, and thus some of the problems with the transplant in this particular patient population is rejection, because you really, it's not someone who has leukemia and whose immunity has already been weakened with the previous treatments. You really have to completely ablate immune system in particular.
And then once it does the job, then we're gonna bring in the cord blood, we're gonna infuse it on this date, and if everything goes good, you know, we're looking about 2 to 3 months.
Got his new chemotherapy today. He threw up. Still looking good.
That's my boy.
My boy threw up twice though. Once in the morning and once a little while ago, but he looks good. Regardless, huh, Papi? Huh, Daddy?
Round 2.
Now he's brushing his teeth.
Oh, he smells like throw up and pee. I'm getting sick. We both got on leave. We were both working at the time, and we handed it over to my mom to deal with our finances. My family and my church family got together and started a fundraiser for us, so we didn't have to worry the pay cuts, you know. We didn't have to worry about that. 3 months tops, that's what I was expecting. I thought he was just gonna go straight into chemo, get him his transplant, and see how well he does. Probably the last month they'll monitor him, and we're gonna get to go home. Goodness, it's 11:55. Mama's just waking up. He didn't have a good night last night, nor in the morning. It lasted all the way till about, I don't know, 6. I don't even remember no more. For some reason, I think he kept having nightmares. He looked scared every time I picked him up. Every time the nurses came in to change him, he freaked out. Why is he getting a blood transfusion? Because he's low, right?
Yeah, he's
And the blood is not going to interfere with his blood because it's O
his
positive.
immune system's not creating no more blood. That's why.
Wow.
It's wiped out. So whatever blood he has in him, that's what he has in him. So the bone marrow makes red blood.
So he needs a stem cell that is a 6 out of 6 match. What this means is in his body, his stem cell has 6 fingerprints. So we need the same stem cell that is a 6 out of 6 match. So when they infuse the blood, it doesn't attack his body. It could be as low as a 4 out of 6 match because they're gonna give him a high dose of chemotherapy that will knock down his immune system that will allow the transplant to work.
Oh, God, look at those rashes. Hives, those are hives. Kind of all over his head right now, but they say it's okay. Say good night, son.
They contact us and they have 2 4 out of 6 matches.
We would have ideally used 6 out of 6 cord blood if it were available.
Citos is officially done with his chemotherapy. He's done 9 days of the regimen. Busulfan was first, then cyclophosphamide was second, followed by ATG chemos. So tomorrow is going down.
12 noon,
It's on like Donkey Kong. 12 noon is the date. The cord blood will come through.
Howard,
And after that, we just got to keep an eye on him because his counts are going to drop to 0.
There goes the cord blood. This little tube of, a bag of blood, you know, being infused in my son. And here I thought, going in as a first time mom, going to have a transplant for your son, it's like, I'm thinking the worst. But it was simple.
We'll flush it several times.
So that's pure stem cell?
More or less. There's some plasma in there.
And those cells would go into the bloodstream and go through the blood into the bones, and those stem cells, which are the cells that later on mature and provide all other blood cells, they will find their spaces in the bones, in the bone marrow, and they would basically get stuck in what we call bone marrow niches. They will stay there and start differentiating.
And hide in there for a little bit. Till they mature, then they get out to the system.
Now, basically, after you infuse the cord blood, you're waiting for 3 to 4 weeks to find out if there will be any counts coming into peripheral blood, waiting for the engraftment.
Come on, Daddy. Quick and easy, buddy.
Oh, heavy hair.
You think it's because it's cold or just because of the pain?
It's probably cold. You probably feel a little pain because that's what it makes you feel.
Oh, the back there?
The chemo.
Oh.
Okay, puppy. Oh my God, look at that hair he lost. You see that hair? Come get this.
That's why the nurses love us, because we do the job, you know what I mean?
Oh, son. You see that head?
They like, we should hire them.
Puppy.